Welcome to Chapter 1, the Lifespan Perspective. I'm going to break this chapter up into several videos for easier viewing, but we'll just get started with the lifespan perspective itself. So the lifespan perspective, we say the lifespan perspective because it is a way of studying human development from conception to death. Historically, we have studied child development, so from birth to adolescence or perhaps very young adulthood, but for the most part, people tended to think for a long time that once you were an adult, development ended, you were fully grown, and that was it. But more and more, we've come to recognize that development is lifelong, and that there's a lot more to it than we can attribute to just child development. So some characteristics of development. One is that it is lifelong. It's multidimensional, multidirectional. It has plasticity. It's multidisciplinary. It's contextual. It involves growth, maintenance, and regulation of loss, and it involves co-construction of biological, sociocultural, and individual factors working together. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these first. So first of all, development is lifelong. It occurs throughout the entire lifespan, so it's not something that just stops happening. We continue changing throughout our entire lives, and that one is pretty straightforward. Development is also multidimensional. There are lots of different ways in which we develop. So we develop physically, which we tend to think about when we think about children developing. It's very obvious their physical development, but also the way that we change socially, cognitively, so the way that we think, the way that we process information, the way that we change emotionally. These are all different elements of development. Development is multidirectional. So it involves gains and losses at every stage. So we tend to, not really pay much attention to the fact that, there are, again, gains and losses at every stage. So, for example, I had a lot more energy when I was 3 than I do now, but I'm cognitively more advanced than I was at 3. But I might not be as wise as I am now as I will be in later adulthood. And when we're, so our peak times for, let's say, our earnings or our physical strength or our intellectual capabilities, these are all different. We hit our peaks at different parts of life. Another is that development has plasticity. We are capable of change throughout the lifespan. We have the expression, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you absolutely can. So these human traits and abilities are capable of change. In fact, you can physically see this change in our brains occurring with time and experience. Development is multidisciplinary. There are a lot of different academic fields that contribute to our understanding of human development. So the biology of it, the psychology of it, sociology, anthropology, lots of different fields coming together to help us paint a picture for all the different ways that we develop, the stages that we develop in, and the factors that impact our development. Development is contextual. So when you are talking about someone who is developing and changing, like how did they come to be the person that they are today, you should consider all contexts and interactions that made up that person's life. There are 3 different types of contextual changes. One is normative age-graded influences. So these are similar for individuals sharing the same age group. So everyone at 5 years old shares some of the same experiences. Everyone at 90 years old shares some of the same experiences. There are normative history-graded influences. So these are common to people of a particular generation due to historical circumstances. So, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a generation in terms of age, but anyone who lived through similar circumstances due to the period of history that they were in, that would be a normative history-graded influence. So right now, this pandemic, this is going to be a history-graded influence for everyone who is alive today and can remember it. Other things, so if you've been through a major natural disaster, There's also there are also things that can impact large groups of people. Okay, so if it's some historical event that influenced the lives of a large group of people, that could be considered a normative history-graded influence. So things like wars and things like that. Then you have non-normative life events. So these are unusual circumstances that have a major impact on an individual's life, but they're unique to that individual. So if someone experienced a traumatic event very early on in life, that would be a non-normative life event. It's not like everyone, can share those same experiences with that individual. They're not even likely to be able to, relate to that as much with a lot of other people. Some contemporary concerns with development. So some things that we want to know, like why are we interested in human development? One, we are interested in learning how to impact and improve people's health and well-being. We're interested in learning more about parenting and education. And we're interested in learning about sociocultural context and diversity and how those things impact an individual's development. So how their culture impacts their development. Looking at cross-cultural studies, so comparing two or more cultures to see how that impacts development. Looking at how ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender, all these different things that come together to create an individual's unique experience in life and that form a basis for how they become the person that they have become. These are all things that we're interested in, and also how we can use this information to help people to have the best, most positive development that they can have. With regard to the nature of development, we'll be focusing on three major areas of development: biological, cognitive, and socio-emotional processes. So biological processes, these are physical changes. So again, changes in height, changes in weight, changes in skin and hair and your sight, and all these different things that we associate. You think about menopause and the first time a child is able to walk. These are all physical changes. Then you've got cognitive processes. So these are changes in thought, intelligence, and language. Again, these are processes that are more apparent in children, but that we have come to realize continue to develop throughout the lifespan. And then you've got socio-emotional processes. So these are changes in the way that we relate with other people, form relationships, how we deal with our emotions, and how our personality changes or stays the same. There are some major periods of development that we'll focus on. So you've got your prenatal period, so this is from conception to birth. You've got infancy, which when someone refers to an infant, we're generally talking about birth to 1.5 years to 2 years. So it kind of encompasses toddlerhood as well. Then you've got early childhood, so these are like the preschool years, or preschool, pre-K, kindergarten. Then you've got middle and late childhood. I have a couple of middle schoolers, so middle and late childhood. So this would be 6 to 11 years old. So think elementary years. Adolescence. So this is one of the biggest periods. So this is from around 10 or 12 to 8 to 21 years. So these are your middle school, high school, and college years. Then you've got early adulthood. So these are your 20s and 30s. You've got middle adulthood, 40s and 50s, and then 60s on is late adulthood. I saw there's a movie, City Slickers. If you've ever seen that, it's an older movie, but he has a midlife crisis, and he goes up in front of his son's class and he says, "Value this time in your life, kids, because this is when you have everything going for you. When you're a teenager, you think you can do anything, and you do. Your 20s are a blur. Your 30s, you earn a little money, you start a family, and you wonder, what happened to my 20s? 40s, you earn little money, you grow another chin. The music starts to get too loud. One of your old girlfriends from high school becomes a grandmother. 50s, you end up having a minor surgery. You'll call it a procedure, but it's a surgery. 60s, you'll have a major surgery. The music is still too loud, but it doesn't matter because you can't hear it anyway. 70s, you and the wife retire to Fort Lauderdale, start having lunch at 10, dinner at 2, breakfast the night before, spend most of your time wandering around malls searching for the ultimate soft yogurt and muttering, how come the kids don't call? How come the kids don't call? 80s, you'll have a major stroke. You'll end up babbling to some nurse who your wife can't stand, but who you call mama. Any questions? So I obviously went off on a tangent there, but I am finding, interestingly, that some of that is quite spot on in my experience. And it sounds very depressing, and he's only focusing on the depressing parts. But the idea is that at each of these different stages of life, there are different things that we're focused on. All right. So we do have these distinct time periods of interest and growth and change, and we'll be talking about those throughout the semester. And then finally, developmental issues. Some major developmental issues that are in question in lifespan development. One is the nature-nurture issue. So when we're looking at someone and we're trying to determine either how it is that they have come to develop the way that they have been, or how we might further their development in a particular area, one is the nature-nurture issue. So to what degree is our development based on biological inheritance, and to which degree is it based on environmental experience? Okay, so how much of that is just in your DNA, it's just who you are and how you'll be, and how much of that is your experiences, your nurture, the nutrition you got, the education you got, the parenting you got, all these different things. Then you've got the stability versus change issue. Are we forever shaped by our early experiences? So when we're young, our experiences were what they were, and that's just who we are now as a result as adults, and that's it. Or is there a capacity to change? And if so, to what degree? And then there's the continuity versus discontinuity issue. Is our development in life a gradual process, or do we develop in distinct stages? So it's is it just a keep on keeping on sort of scenario, as illustrated here, or do we have clear and distinct jumps in our development? So these are some things that are of interest to individuals studying development. Okay, so I will end here, and then I will have the rest of this in the next video.